Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. Some of you may have seen our advert in the Isle of Wight County Press last week, advertising for a new Member Support Officer. We have received a significant number of calls from people who are looking for one-to-one support in help to getting back out after the COVID lockdowns. Everybody is aware that the physical environment has changed, and many people have been isolating on their own for 18 months, and the thought of going outside can be very daunting. If this is how you're feeling, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We are employing somebody for the next 6 to 8 months in order to help people get back outside. The trustees believe very strongly in the principle that everybody is an individual and should be treated as such. We've also been in the county press a couple of other times in the last few weeks. Firstly, because Ruby, one of our members, reached the grand age of 100. Congratulations, Ruby. And also Sheila Angel, one of our members, who was touching her toes during May 100 times each day. And in fact, Sheila hasn't stopped. She's found a new level of fitness from it and is carrying on. We only reported this in the county press recently because the donations kept rolling in, and Sheila has raised over £1,500 for the charity. Thank you very much, Sheila. Also, not to forget Yvonne, her daughter, who is constantly making beautiful homemade cakes for us and keeps bringing them in. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Yvonne volunteers for the charity, as does Sheila, and we are at the moment desperately short of volunteers, particularly escorts. So if you know anyone that can spare just 1 hour a week, even if it is just once a month, it would really help, as it would alleviate the pressure on our current volunteers. So if you know anybody who is able to drive either a minibus or a normal car, or somebody who would be happy to escort, please get them to call the charity. We can register them as a volunteer once, of course, we've done the usual checks, and this will alleviate the pressure on our current volunteers. Everybody, stay safe. And let's hope the weather changes back again soon. Lisa.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Quarter of British drivers admit to panic buying fuel. Close to a quarter, 24% of UK drivers have admitted to joining the queues to fill up their tanks in the so-called fuel crisis, according to new statistics. The research published today by used car finance company ChooseMyCar.com showed that millions of drivers fell victim to the hysteria and headed to the petrol pumps. Interestingly, men were more likely to take action, with 26% taking action compared to just 22% of women. And age matters, with the younger age bracket of 18 to 34 seeing a huge 37% admitting to filling up, while just 22% of the 35 to 54 age bracket took action, and just 17% of the over 55s. There are also variations geographically. Regionally, the West Midlands and Greater London were most likely to fill up, both seeing 37% admitting to fuelling up, whereas the Yorkshire and Humber region was more relaxed, with just 17% taking action. Other interesting stats include 37% increase in searches for electric cars on ChooseMyCar.com. 25% of people are more likely to look to buy an electric car as my next car due to costs and potential shortages of fuel. Half of drivers, 50%, are changing their car usage habits to conserve fuel. 46% of drivers more likely to fill my tank next time I go to the petrol station. 45% of drivers will now keep my tank over half full because of potential shortages. London and Birmingham saw 31% of drivers take action to fill up. Norwich saw 30% action, with 28% of people in Manchester and Glasgow heading to the pumps because of the panic. Founder of ChooseMyCar.com, Nick Zapolsky, said, "Whilst it's easy to pass judgment on other drivers, our stats show that millions of UK drivers didn't want to take any chances. Although we were told there actually was no shortage of fuel, the long queues and endless stations running out was enough to send a quarter of us to the pumps. It just shows how reliant we've all become on our cars and the anxiety it creates when we believe we might not have access to one. It shows the importance of having a reliable working car and the impact they have on our lives, and perhaps will spark renewed interest in electric vehicles in the future. EV car searches on our website are up 37% since the panic buying started."
This is Chris, reading an article from On the Wight. Isle of Wight septuagenarians share their experience of learning new creative skills. The Independent Arts Time and Tide project paired local history with creativity, allowing older people on the island to engage with cultural pursuits. Isle of Wight charity Independent Arts improves quality of life and reduces social isolation for people of all ages on the island. Supported through funding from the Arts Council and Bearing Foundation, their pilot project, Time and Tide, celebrates the ageing community, offering the older residents an exciting island-wide programme of creative activities. Residents took part in creative workshops ranging from photography and visual art to dance, theatre, music and creative writing, along with museum visits, pop-up exhibitions and touring collections. As the Arts Council looks back and celebrates their 75 years as a public funding body, we hear from two of the project's participants who've lived throughout that time. Rose Haddon and Iris Ferris tell us what they enjoyed while taking part, as well as some fantastic memories from their creative past, including how they got involved in the island's carnival culture, back then and now. Learning new creative skills, Rose, 77, and Iris, 72, took part in the Time and Tide project, alongside some of their neighbours, at retirement complex Knights Court in Ventnor. The project saw the pair learn about pop-up photography from artist and photographer Julian Winslow, photographing each other as part of a final exhibition piece. They tried their hand at pottery, tutored by local potter Neil Tregear, award-winning carnival banner. They also created a large textile banner supported by artist Mandy Bagert, which Rose and Iris carried at Ventnor Carnival and won 2 places. Iris said, "The best part was when we took the banner round the carnival." Rose said, "They judged us and we won a great big cup. I never imagined there would be so many people." Iris added, "You should have seen her face. The whole experience was fantastic." Iris said, "I just never imagined there would be so many people. It was absolutely fabulous. The whole experience was fantastic. Like I say, I'm not good with my hands. It's great to do things you didn't know you could do. I just didn't believe I could do such things." Reminiscing, Rose reminisced about times she'd been involved in the carnival in the past. The classic one was, we had a minibus that used to take the men and women out, and we turned that into a castle. And then me and my friend went on a mobility scooter and built it as a horse, and we went all round the village in that. Pairing local history and creativity, Time and Tide has paired local history and creativity and brought opportunities for older people on the island to engage with cultural pursuits. Find out more about the work of independent arts by visiting their website.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Remembering John Hannam, one of the first gentlemen of journalism. For nearly 50 years, writer and broadcaster John Hannam interviewed the stars. His extensive catalogue of more than 5,000 showbiz interviews includes impressive names such as Charlton Heston, Ken Dodd, Cliff Richard, Judi Dench, Bruce Forsyth and Alan Rickman, many of whom became John's personal friends. Known for his many years on Isle of Wight Radio and his monthly showbiz feature in Beacon magazine, John has written hundreds of articles for publications across the Isle of Wight and beyond. He loved to write and continued to do so right up until his death. Many remember John for his popular Isle of Wight radio show John Hannam Meets, which ran for an impressive 2 decades. It was, in fact, the longest-running non-stop chat show on radio. It's no wonder John managed to secure so many great interviews throughout his career. His wonderfully sunny personality and equally bright wardrobe were almost impossible to say no to. In an interview with Isle of Wight Radio and Beacon magazine earlier this year, John spoke of many memorable years, getting up close and personal with the stars. He said, "I've always found the bigger the star, the nicer the person. Once you actually get them on a one-to-one at home or in a theatre dressing room, they're just like you or me. They're lovely people, really. I've met lots of my idols, Roger Bannister, Stirling Moss, Georgie Best. It was a great thrill interviewing them. One of my last interviews before lockdown was Sir Ian McKellen. He made me feel so welcome. It was a dream come true. He arrived on a motorbike and was very humble. It was a delight to be in his company." John talked of the importance of doing your research before stepping into an interview. "I was halfway through interviewing John Mills, and he said, 'John, I must say, you know more about John Mills than I do.' I took that as a real compliment. Looking back, I've been more successful than I could ever have imagined. You obviously get refusals. Very early on in my career, I decided that I wanted to meet the person. It would be an in-person interview. So over the years, I've lost quite a few interviews because people wanted to do them over the phone. But I've always stuck to meeting them face to face. I wanted to meet them, shake their hand, and have a laugh with them. So that's what I've done. And it worked a treat, because many people who John said he'd once sit and watch on the TV became personal friends of his. John had a unique interview technique when invited back to a celebrity's home. What I learned very quickly was that when you go to someone's house, make sure you go to the toilet. They've usually got lots of memorabilia in their bathrooms. I've been to so many houses, Des O'Connor's, June Whitfield's, Bruce Forsyth's. I went in to June Whitfield's kitchen in Wimbledon. She got an old banger out of the garage and drove me back to the station. John became a popular figure in the showbiz world, often being sought out to interview top celebs. One such interview took him by surprise, but became one of his fondest interviews yet. An avid John Hannam Meets listener called and invited John to interview Dame Judi Dench live on stage. The Dame asked to meet John for a cup of tea and biscuits before the event and was thrilled to see John turn up in his colourful best. I was wearing my posh purple shirt and purple shoes. She got really close and down on her knees and looked at my shoes. John and Judy got on famously, sharing a joke or two on stage together. She said, "You are naughty, John. You're asking me all these cheeky questions." But John's morals were incredibly important to him, and while he regularly asked the odd, cheeky question, he believed private lives should stay private. I don't pry. I always remember meeting Denise Welsh. I shook her hand and said, "Denise, I don't really want to talk about your latest boyfriend or whatever you're up to off stage." And she said, "My gosh, you're different. You'd better come in." John said he had felt very privileged to have been asked to do the interview with Dame Judi Dench, and about 6 weeks later it led to an interview with Sir Ian McKellen. Other memorable interviews include Charlton Heston. He gave me over an hour of his time in a hotel in Piccadilly. It was the longest interview he had done in his life. He asked if I'd had lunch, which I hadn't. He ordered me a smoked salmon sandwich. But interviewing the stars of showbiz wasn't always a smoked salmon picnic. One or two haven't been very nice to me. I went to London to interview Lonnie Donegan. Everything I said he disagreed with. I have a card where I have a few bullet points, and he picked up the card and threw it across the room and told me to do it without it. Well, he really gave me a rough time. If I hadn't travelled several hours to get there, I would have walked out. That wasn't a very pleasant experience. His road manager had told me he was the worst person he'd ever worked with in 30 years. I interviewed his son 2 years after he sadly died. I told him his dad had given me a rough time, and his son said, "You were lucky, I had to live with him." Even Barbara Windsor said she'd kept a letter from John hung in her kitchen. "She was a lovely lady," said John. "She came to Cowes many years ago to take part in a tin bath race. I turned up and she was charming. She gave me a lovely interview." John was a huge fan of live theatre, often attending an impressive 100 shows a year. He told Isle of Wight Radio, "I love musicals. I can watch a film musical, but there's nothing like being in a theatre and watching it live in front of you." Blood Brothers has always been one of my favourites. It's a very sad musical. I first saw it at the Mayflower. As I came out, I was embarrassed to be crying. I looked around and all the other guys were crying as well, which made me feel a lot better. I'm quite an emotional person, which I think is good. I even cry at Call the Midwife when it's on. There's nothing better than coming to the interval of a professional production and there's a buzz. And then when you finish, you come out of the theatre and everyone's talking about it. I love it. You walk back to the bus or the taxi or the train and people are all talking about it. It's fantastic. John even penned 4 best-selling showbiz books, an idea which was originally brought to John by his friend Marty Wilde. Marty asked what I do with all my interviews, and then said I was to write them in a book, warts and all. I kept getting emails asking how the book was going, so in the end I wrote the first one. It was about pop stars in the 50s, 60s and 70s. That proved so popular that I did one on showbiz stars. My friend Jimmy Tarbuck did the foreword for that one. Then recently I have written a 3rd and 4th about people who have lived here on the Isle of Wight. I've enjoyed it. John's books are still available to purchase at www.johnhannam, or lowercase of course, JOHNHANNAM.com. That's www.johnhannam.com, as well as in a few shops across the island. The news of John's passing has sparked a flood of tributes from islanders, celebrities and John's many colleagues in the media. Singer and television presenter Jane MacDonald said, "I had the pleasure of being interviewed by John on many occasions over the years. He was always a joy to be around. His smile and passion for the industry were infectious. John Hannam was a true gentleman and will be sorely missed by everyone who knew him." Broadcaster Fred Dinage said, "John was such a very special man and such a talent. He managed to get the most amazing interviews. He was a good friend of mine and he will be greatly missed." Actress Celia Imrie said, "He was unstoppable and brimming with the joy of life. A wonderful example to us all. Whenever we met, his enthusiasm during our interviews made our conversations such fun it never felt like work. His celebrated knowledge of the theatre, films, television, radio, actors and actresses was remarkable, and a measure of how loved and respected he was by all of us lucky enough to have known him. I am honoured to have been one of those who admired and adored him." Sean Williamson, best known for playing Barry in EastEnders, said, "He was a wonderful man who was such a great supporter of any act which appeared on the Isle of Wight. He'll be greatly missed." Level 42 frontman Mark King said, "I was so sorry to hear of John's passing. A lovely, kind man who loved his music as much as he loved the island. I remember our first interview at the Babaloo Club in 1980, when he got behind Level 42 and championed us before any other journalist, and our subsequent meetings were always something to look forward to, as it was like talking to a dear friend." Comedian, entertainer and game show host Jimmy Tarbuck said, "John was one of the first gentlemen of journalism. If you gave him an interview, he told it like it was. God bless." Legendary island musician Brian Sharp, who's best known for bands like the Cherokees, Blue Moon and Hoggy and the Sharptones, was a lifelong friend of John's. He said, "Following his recent sad death, I felt humbled when I was asked to submit a short tribute to my old friend John Hannam because of the elite and huge company of famous stars he has rubbed shoulders with during his remarkable career as a journalist." But John always remained humble and modest himself, and was as keen to interview local characters as he was to mix with international celebrities. He had the almost unique ability to treat everyone he came into contact with as an equal. I've been in many bands on the Isle of Wight over the years, and when he interviewed us, it felt to me as if John was in all those bands with us. He was without doubt one of the most genuine people I have ever met, and I feel privileged to have been a small part of his astonishing life. Businesswoman Dame Diane Thompson. I first met John Hannam a few years ago when he interviewed me shortly after I purchased the George Hotel in Yarmouth. His questions were well prepared and very thought-provoking. His manner was kind and considerate. The interview was just like chatting to an old friend. We talked a lot about the island, which we both loved, and also about music. He thought it was very funny that I chose Hotel California by the Eagles as my first record for the Desert Island Disc section. I met him on several other occasions when he came for lunch at the hotel. What a charming, gentle man in the truest sense of the word. He will be sadly missed by all who knew him, but his legacy is the joy he brought to thousands. God bless John. Lyricist Don Black said, "He had a way about him that was so engaging and passionate. He made his interviews seem so effortless, yet it was obvious he did loads of research, because he never once asked a dumb question." Well, that alone sets him above most interviewers. Actors John Woodvine and Lynn Farley said, "What a lovely man. He was a gentleman and a real hard worker who had warmth, an open heart, and who was generous with his time and his spirit. Both of us were interviewed by him more than once for his radio program, and we always enjoyed it." He was a meticulous researcher, often surprising us with little bits of information that he had found somewhere. He was so easy to talk to. He asked interesting questions and was a wonderful listener, a real talent to possess. Louise Hastings, managing editor at Sky News, said, "John loved his job. He was genuinely interested in people, and his passion for hearing their stories showed in the thousands of interviews he carried out over the course of his career. Only a couple of years ago, he told me he never wanted to stop. He's been a great role model and a kind friend, and I know he'll be missed by many. Go well, dear John." Andy Shear, Programme Director at Wave 105 and Bower South Regional Content Director, said, "As one of the founder presenters on Isle of Wight Radio, I was so sad to hear of John's passing. We use the term legend far too much these days, but John really was an Isle of Wight legend. I've known him myself since I was 15, when he very kindly took me with him to the BBC in Southampton, as he'd heard I was interested in doing radio as a career. It was quite a while until that radio career happened, but John was beaming on the day I started at Isle of Wight Radio in 1990, and was always so supportive and interested in how things progressed for me after I left in 2008. I really do owe him so much. John was always very loved by us all at Isle of Wight Radio, and the reason his show lasted for such a long time was simple. People just loved being interviewed by him, and that came across on air. Whether it was a famous entertainer or a local character, they knew he'd done his research, and they knew he was genuinely interested in them and what they had to say. In any feedback to him, I often used to say, "John, please stop saying really all the time." He never took the blindest bit of notice, I'm glad to say. We'll miss you, John. Wherever you are now, I hope you're still asking questions. Isle of Wight Radio's Paul Topping said, I first met John whilst working for TV12 in 1998. He immediately struck me as an exuberant man with suits to match and a little black book as long as War and Peace with so many celebrity names and numbers noted within its pages. His professionalism, energy and wit quickly led to his interview-style programme becoming a weekly favourite on our very own local rival to greats such as Parkinson and Wogan. For those who didn't know John, he was just one of the kindest, most supportive people I have met. He was always interested in what people were doing, and, most impressive of all, he spent the time and effort with those just starting out. Many of those people are now great broadcasters in their own right. Claire John, Managing Director of Isle of Wight Radio and Beacon Magazine, said, John has been part of my life for 21 years and a huge part of the Isle of Wight Radio family and the Beacon Magazine for over 30 years. I feel very honoured to have known John and enjoyed many chats about the guests he had lined up to interview, which we all know was his true passion. John will be missed beyond measure by everyone, but I, for one, am so pleased his legacy can live on through the hundreds of interviews he conducted over the decades. Farewell to a true gentleman. Everyone at Isle of Wight Radio and Beacon Magazine will miss John walking into the building every month. He has been and always will be firmly in our hearts. Our thoughts are with his son Sean, daughter Caroline and partner Bertie. The November edition of Beacon Magazine will be dedicated to John's memory.
This is Alison reading from the Island Echo. Bembridge residents turn out to have their say on housing plans. Over 150 Bembridge residents met with Island MP Bob Seeley earlier this week to share their views on the new draft island plan, which will determine where new housing is built on the island over the next 15 years. Mr Seeley was joined by East Wight councillors Joe Robertson and Jonathan Bacon, and West Wight councillors Peter Spink and Chris Jarman, who were also keen to hear the views of residents. The meeting kicked off with a presentation by local campaign group Build a Better Bembridge, a group of local residents concerned with the well-being of the village. Bruce Huber spoke eloquently about the needs of the village. The group presented their concerns about the sustainability of the village to absorb 180 new homes, with 2 small access roads, existing high street congestion issues and limited parking and employment opportunities. Drainage and water management issues were also highlighted, along with concerns about the additional strain on transport, healthcare and education. House prices and environmental concerns were also raised. Mr Seeley also addressed residents, setting out his plans to address overdevelopment across the island, which included lobbying government for greater landscape protections and reducing the island's housing target. He urged residents who hadn't yet responded to the island plan consultation to do so before it closes for comments on Friday the 1st of October. Following the meeting, Mr Seeley said, I would like to thank all of the Bembridge residents who came to the meeting to discuss how planning can be more community-led and how we fight against large-scale and unwanted greenfield development. There were lots of great contributions. In Bembridge, it's really important that planners do not expand the village settlement boundaries to allow more large-scale development on the edge of the village. I have published my response to the Island Plan consultation on my website. I would urge anyone looking for advice on how to respond to the consultation to take a look there first. Bembridge councillor Joe Robertson said, "I am calling for a reduction in future housing numbers for Bembridge in the draft Island Plan strategy. Over the summer we have seen severe flooding in the village. 3 of the worst affected roads, High Street, Stane Road and Hillway, intersect with fields that the draft IPS allocates for 180 new homes. Having seen flood damage done to properties and 20,000 litres of water pumped out of the nearby pub on one night this summer, it is clear that the drains are unable to cope with the current houses. Our priority must be to ensure local infrastructure is able to cope with the housing and population we already have before any discussion about adding more. Bembridge is in many respects an island within an island, having only 2 access roads and 1 bus an hour. It is bound on 3 sides by the sea. It is simply not suitable as a growth area, which the draft IPS appears to have it earmarked for. I am also calling for the IPS to keep Bembridge as a rural service centre like Yarmouth and not categorise it as a secondary settlement alongside bigger, busier places such as Ventnor and Wootton. I would like to thank local residents for turning out in such large numbers to voice their concerns. My thanks also to Bob Seeley for taking the time to visit Bembridge and for speaking so passionately about protecting our island from unwanted development. Councillor for Brading and St Helens and Cabinet Member for Environment, Heritage and Waste Management, Jonathan Bacon, said, "I was very pleased to attend the meeting at Bembridge and to see the level of interest in the draft island planning strategy. As was stated at the meeting, the current document is very much a draft and will be amended before the final version is arrived at. With this in mind, the input received at such meetings is very valuable. The key is to make sure we are able to provide evidence and substantiate what is eventually put forward, as it has to be approved by a government inspector. It is also important that we ensure we produce a plan that is acceptable so that it can be put into effect as soon as possible and enable us to get away from the position we have been left in, where we have little or no local control at all over our planning. Within these parameters, we must do everything we can to get a plan that works to preserve and sustain all that is good about the island."
This is Brian reading an article from On the Wight. Isle of Wight has highest rental demand and largest drop in properties available to rent in the UK. Looking at 400,000 plus rental listings, comparing pre-COVID to now, summer 2019 to 2021, Rightmove's figures show the Isle of Wight as largest drop in the UK of properties available to rent and highest demand. The Isle of Wight has seen the largest decline in the UK for available properties to rent, with an 82% decrease in available rentals. That means only 1 in 5 properties are now available to rent compared to the summer before COVID 2019. More people looking to rent. Not only that, but demand for rental properties is nearly 4 times what it was. The data comes from a study by Rightmove, who say that competition for rentals on the island has more than quadrupled, rising by 376%. Landlords switch to holiday lettings. This won't come as news to the residents seeking long-term rentals, who've discovered in the last 18 months that many landlords have decided to put their properties on the holiday let market instead. Tim Bannister, Rightmove's Director of Property Data, said, Landlords in the typical tourist destinations around Britain have been chasing the huge surge in demand for holiday lets this summer, which has led to a temporary drop in the stock available for permanent tenants. However, as the summer holidays are coming to an end, agents are now reporting more landlords turning their attention to longer-term tenants as a more secure and stable option for the rest of the year and into 2022. The value of a good tenant should not be underestimated, and with the competition for rental properties in these areas so high right now, it could be a good time for landlords to take stock and consider their best longer-term option. In 30 years, never seen rental market like it is now. Matthew Wight, director at Hose Roads Dixon, said, "In more than 30 years working in lettings, I've never seen a rental market like it is now. Stock levels are reducing year on year, and tenant demand is the greatest it's ever been." The Isle of Wight is in a unique geographical position, and due to many now able to work from home, we're seeing less accidental landlords, whereas pre-COVID, homeowners could find themselves suddenly needing to commute to the mainland due to a change in job or circumstance, which is reducing the source of the rental properties becoming available. A lack of choice and available property also means we're seeing more tenants staying put. That said, conversely, we're seeing more investment in property this year as people look for a greater return on their money, which more often than not, property delivers.
This is Chris reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight NHS Trust praised for financial savings. For the first time in a long time, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust has money left over at the end of the financial year. At the Isle of Wight NHS Trust's annual general meeting today, Thursday, Director of Finance Darren Cattell revealed that he called what he called the very big positive. Mr. Cattell said the Trust was on a journey towards financial and clinical sustainability. He said it had been significant progress towards that in the last financial year, recording a very small surplus of £14,000, and he acknowledged that it made a massive difference to the deficit previously recorded. The Trust had planned for an expected deficit between April the 1st, 2020 and March the 31st, 2021 of £3.7 million. In 2019/20, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust recorded a deficit of £17.7 million in its annual accounts. To help combat some of the costs relating to COVID-19, offsetting new and additional procedures, protocols and equipment, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust received £16.4 million from funding sources. Its Chief Executive, Maggie Oldham, said COVID-19 had had a significant impact on the NHS across the country, stretching services and people to near breaking point. However, Ms. Oldham said her colleagues and staff could be proud of how they had responded, continuing to keep themselves, their patients and the community safe. Mr. Cattell said, "We had a really significant improvement in our finances, and at the time a real challenge. So well done, and thank you all for your contributions in supporting that. We have received an amount from central government and the Department for Health to help treat all our patients this year. So we were able to carry on doing exactly what we needed to do, which was really helpful. Another factor that helped dates back to April 2020. The government cleared more than £90 million worth of debt from the Isle of Wight NHS Trust. The former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, announced the scrapping of more than £13 billion of historic debt as part of a wider reform to combat the pressures NHS trusts were facing, helping them become financially stable. On the island, that meant over £90 million of revenue and capital debts and loans were cleared.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Bloomin' marvellous. Ventnor awarded silver gilts in annual bloom competition. Ventnor's gardeners have come up smelling of roses at the annual South and Southeast in Bloom competition. Historic Ventnor Park and the town's spectacular seafront cascades caught the judge's eye and delivered the town council and local contractors John O'Connor Grounds Maintenance coveted Silver Gilt Awards. Ventnor Park dates from the 19th century and covers an area of about 7 acres. The tranquil surroundings feature landscaped grounds over a range of different levels, with mature trees, shrubs, herbaceous embedding borders, a bandstand, a meandering stream with gentle falls, and a putting green. Judges paid tribute to the dedication of the small team of gardeners who keep the park looking its best, and gave special mention to Jackie Tiller and her husband Richard, who run the putting green, which they described as a joy to behold. Judges said, "This popular, family-friendly attraction is a credit to the park, and the fact it was kept running and welcoming during much of the pandemic is testament to the dedication of Jackie and Richard. Everyone concerned with maintaining this park as a historic and welcoming green space for all to enjoy should be congratulated on their effort." The beautiful cascades, with its series of decorative waterfalls on Ventnor seafront, was also singled out for praise. Judges noted the vegetation was managed skillfully to expose the tumbling water to best effect, while the shrubs and herbaceous plants that adorn the rocky banks added to the charm. Ventnor Park is managed and funded by the Town Council in partnership with the Isle of Wight Council. Town Mayor, Councillor Stephen Cockett, said, "Ventnor is proud of its outstanding park and cascade garden, which provide remarkable and unique experiences for the Isle of Wight. The Council would like to praise all those involved in the upkeep of the park, including the regular users, which treat it with great care and respect. Now, under Town Council management, we look towards a new chapter in Ventnor Park's history. We have been especially delighted to welcome many thousands of people to enjoy the park for the hugely successful Ventnor Fringe Festival and August's wonderful Ventnor Day community celebration." Stan Hayden, contract manager at John O'Connor, said, "Our dedicated team have worked incredibly hard to maintain Ventnor Park, and the results are fantastic. The park thoroughly deserves the Silver Gilt Award, and it's a delight to see the public and visitors making the most of the beautiful space." Councillor Jonathan Bacon, Cabinet Member for the Environment, added, With hundreds of town and villages competing, it was always going to be a tough event to stand out from the crowds. Ventnor not only stood out, it once again won some well-deserved silverware. I would like to say thank you to Ventnor Town Council and John O'Connor Grounds Maintenance, who go that extra mile to keep the park looking good, and also to Jackie and Richard Tiller at Ventnor Putting Green for their continued support.
This is Alison reading from the Island Echo. 2 new species of large predatory dinosaur discovered on the Isle of Wight. A new study led by paleontologists at the University of Southampton suggests that bones found on the Isle of Wight belong to 2 new species of Spinosaurid, a group of predatory theropod dinosaurs closely related to the giant Spinosaurus. The haul of bones was discovered on the beach near Bryston over a period of several years. Keen-eyed fossil collectors initially found parts of 2 skulls, and a crew from Dinosaur Isle Museum recovered a large portion of a tail. In all, over 50 bones from the site have been uncovered from rocks that form part of the Wessex Formation, laid down over 125 million years ago during the early Cretaceous. The only Spinosaurid skeleton previously unearthed in the UK belonged to Baryonyx, which was initially discovered in 1983 in a quarry in Surrey. Most other finds since have been restricted to isolated teeth and single bones. Analysis of the bones carried out at the University of Southampton and published in scientific reports suggested they belonged to species of dinosaurs previously unknown to science. Chris Barker, a PhD student at the University of Southampton and lead author of the study, said, "We found the skulls to differ not only from Baryonyx but also one another, suggesting the UK housed a greater diversity of Spinosaurids than previously thought." The first specimen has been named Ceratosuchops inferioidos, which translates as the horned crocodile-faced hell heron. With a series of low horns and bumps ornamenting the brow region, the name also refers to the predator's likely hunting style, which would be similar to that of a terrifying heron. Herons famously catch aquatic prey around the margins of waterways, but their diet is far more flexible than is generally appreciated and can include terrestrial prey too. The second was named Riparivenata milneri. This translates as Milner's Riverbank Hunter, in honour of esteemed British paleontologist Angela Milner, who recently passed away. Dr. Milner had previously studied and named Baryonyx, a major paleontological event whose discovery substantially improved our understanding of these distinctive predators. Although the skeletons are incomplete, the researchers estimate that both Ceratosuchops and Riparivenata measured around 9 metres in length, snapping up prey with their metre-long skulls. The study also suggested how Spinosaurids might have first evolved in Europe before dispersing into Asia, Africa and South America. Dr. Neil J. Gosling of the University of Southampton, who supervised the project, said, "This work has brought together universities, Dinosaur Isle Museum and the public to reveal these amazing dinosaurs and the incredibly diverse ecology of the south coast of England 125 million years ago." The early Cretaceous rocks on the Isle of Wight describe an ancient floodplain environment bathed in a Mediterranean-like climate. Whilst generally balmy, forest fires occasionally ravage the landscapes, and the remains of burnt wood can be seen throughout the cliffs today. With a large river and other bodies of water attracting dinosaurs and housing various fish, sharks and crocodiles, the habitat provided the newly discovered Spinosaurids with plenty of hunting opportunities. Collector and co-author Brian Foster from Yorkshire, who made an important contribution to the finds and publication, said, This is the rarest and most exciting find I've made in over 30 years of fossil collecting. Fellow collector Jeremy Lockwood, who lives on the Isle of Wight and discovered several bones, added, "We realised after the 2 snouts were found that this would be something rare and unusual. Then it just got more and more amazing as several collectors found and donated other parts of this enormous jigsaw to the museum." Dr. Martin Munt, curator of Dinosaur Isle Museum, noted how these new finds cement the Isle of Wight's status as one of the top locations for dinosaur remains in Europe. The project also solidified how collectors, museums and universities can work together to bring fossil specimens to light. Dr. Munt added, "On behalf of the museum, I wish to express our gratitude to the collectors, including colleagues at the museum, who have made these amazing finds and made them available for scientific research. We also congratulate the team who have worked on these exciting finds and brought them to publication. The new fossils will go on display at Dinosaur Isle Museum at Sandown."
Good morning, this is Madeline.
And this is Morris.
And we're reading the second part of Talking News for Friday the 1st of October. So before we start the second part of the county press, here is this week's Society's news. The new yarn at Millbrook Group is again on Monday. This is open to all members, volunteers and friends who enjoy anything to do with yarn. People come along and enjoy knitting, crocheting and sharing tips and hints about projects they are working on. It is hoped that more people will join. The group is on Monday and runs fortnightly between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. The cost is £1 for refreshments.
The new swimming group at Medina is on every Monday at 1:30 p.m. Transport is available and the cost is £5 and £2.50 for transport. New members always welcome.
Our Godsill Coffee morning will resume on Tuesday the 5th of October at the Old Smithy Tea Rooms. Anyone is welcome to pop along and enjoy a coffee and chat, and we are very grateful to our volunteers Yvonne and Linda who are running this event on behalf of us. It will start at 10:30 a.m. and finish at 12 noon.
Coffee and chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House from 10 a.m. until 11:30, and it is only £1 to include the cake and coffee. Come along and spend time with members and staff discussing various topics, etc.
The Thursday Mix and Mingle is held every week, starting at 10:30 and finishing at 2 p.m. If you would like to come along, please call the office to book a space. Transport can be arranged if required.
The monthly lunch club is on Tuesday the 12th of October at the Horse and Groom in Shalfleet. Transport is available, and if you would like to join, please call the office and book a space by this Friday the 8th of October.
Our fundraising quiz is back at the Waverley Carisbrooke on October the 14th. Entry is £3 per person and teams of 4. If you would like to book a table, please call the Waverley on 522338. We would like to thank our trustee Paul for once again arranging this popular fundraising event for us. For more details, please do not hesitate to call the office, or to book your space, please call Susan on 522205.
Now we're going on to letters to the editor. This one is from Chris Biles of Newport and is headlined Beryl's OK. I'm writing in relation to the ongoing discussions in various local media outlets concerning the island's e-scooter scheme. I note concerns being expressed that the operator of the island's e-scooter concession appeared to show little interest when approached about issues of potential misuse. I thought it worth highlighting a recent experience in which my decision to approach Beryl about an irregular parking incident yielded positive results. The incident related to an e-scooter deposited outside a hotel in Newport's Quay Street that was diagonally skewed across the narrow pavement so as to cause an obstruction. As a totally blind pedestrian using a white cane, I only became aware of this scooter when my shin made contact with the front wheel, with my cane probably having failed to detect this obstruction by a matter of millimetres. Later, my leg started to blister, which seemed sufficient grounds to report matters. The CEO at the island-based blindness support charity Sight for Wight advised approaching the company directly because Beryl has GPS data supplied by each vehicle to track down any rider hiring a machine within a specific period of use. When I contacted Beryl, my hope was that the company could investigate what was in my view a substantial infringement of the terms for hiring the scooter, because rather than being returned to one of Newport's designated deposit or collection points, one of their machines was left unattended in a way that was causing a rather conspicuous obstruction to the pavement. As things turned out, I was contacted by Beryl around 24 hours after my original incident report was sent. I was advised that the person to whom the offending e-scooter had been allocated had been tracked down and duly reminded about the appropriate usage of such vehicles in the light of my specific complaint. Beryl has established procedures for recording such incidents, the details of which are also submitted to the government department overseeing the development of various e-scooter projects at a national level. It is definitely worth reporting such incidents to Beryl Bikes via email. This is support@beryl.cc.
Floating bridge will be sorted out. From Councillor Phil Jordan, Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure. I read with interest Richard Hollis's missives on the floating bridge in the county press on the 24th of September. Richard Hollis, a Conservative ex-councillor, attempts, yet again, to rewrite history with a misleading narrative surrounding the Conservatives handling the floating bridge debacle. His administration did bring the vessel into service without adequate trials and tests. They did spend millions of pounds trying to fix the faults. They did try to convince the residents of this island that the vessel was fit for purpose, and then prevaricated on legal process and on dealing with the problem head-on. In November 2020, the SLEP, who funded the purchase of the new vessel, asked for an independent technical report on the issues of the failing FB6. That request was ignored by the previous administration and left unactioned. In March 2021, the former leader of the Conservative administration claimed on numerous occasions that a legal process was underway between the council and the builder-designer of the vessel. In fact, no mediation process had ever started whatsoever. Ex-councillor Hollis claims that there should have been a project board, but that is exactly what was in place for the duration of the project, with all parties, including experts and the SLEP, as members of the board. As chair of scrutiny, he would have well known that fact. And once again, 2 independent reports have cleared entirely the then independent administration of liability in the procurement of the current FB6. Instead, the Alliance administration has immediately and decisively demanded that the mediation process be undertaken before the end of November 2021. This is currently being arranged. In addition, the Alliance have started the commissioning of an independent technical report on the vessel, which will be completed by the end of 2021 latest, and complies with the SLEP requirement and request that the previous administration failed to do. The Alliance have also placed a moratorium on major capital spend on the FB6, other than for immediate and minor breakdowns to maintain the service. In March 2022, there is a statutory MCA 5-year inspection of the vessel. There is no choice in this, 4 to 6 weeks removal from service, nor the costs of this inspection of around £250,000. In stark contrast to the way the Conservatives dealt with FB6, their misinformation and their weak and failed attempts to find a solution, the Alliance will, within the first 6 months of office, resolve the mediation process, will have commissioned an independent technical report, and will have resolved all matters directly with the SLEP before taking very clear and decisive action to finally place a full stop on the past 4 years of incompetence. Considering all the actions the Alliance are embarking upon, a pragmatic and clear and decisive action plan will be implemented, and if that indicates a new vessel, then the Alliance will not hesitate to take the decision and move this forward from incompetence to a sustainable completion.
This is a letter from Rear Admiral Rob Stevens, who is the chairman of Perpetua's Tidal Energy Centre, and the headline reads, "Tidal power will be a turning point for islanders." The past week has certainly been a wake-up call for all of us. Anyone that has spent time queuing at a petrol station cannot fail to sense our vulnerability in this growing energy crisis. It's time to do things differently, and we need to act now. Oil and gas stocks imports are limited, and using them is irreversibly damaging the planet. The UK recognises that it has too little control over energy supplies. Plus, with the COP26 summit next month, carbon reduction is now an urgent global priority. The island has a big role to play here. The seas around its coastline have the capacity to power thousands of homes using a totally reliable, renewable and carbon-free energy source, the tide. The Isle of Wight Council is on the brink of an important decision for the island and the UK. Its planning committee will soon be considering the onshore planning application for the Perpetua's Tidal Energy Centre, PTEC. Approval will mean that by 2025, the tides around St Catherine's Point will be a groundbreaking source of totally reliable tidal power, generated by British-made low freeboard turbines in the sea, 2.5 kilometres from Ventnor. This is a crucial step forward for the UK and the island, generating jobs, new technical insights and bringing significant inward investment. Results from our consultation this summer found 88% of local people support the development of renewable energy. Our website, perpetualstidal.com, explains how PTEC will work and the huge benefits it will bring, as well as responding to misinformation circulating around the project. This is a turning point, not just for the islanders of today, but for generations to come.
French weapons fallacy from Malcolm Watson of Ryde. D. Painter is mistaken in his comments about the French in the county press of the 24th of September. First, they did not sell Exocet missiles to Argentina during the Falklands War, but prior to it, and before it seemed likely the two countries would enter into combat with each other. When the war began, France embargoed weapons sales and support for Argentina. They also allowed the British to use French ports in West Africa and provided them with information on the weapons and planes that they had sold to Argentina. Secondly, Australia does not have a nuclear industry to have reservations about sharing any nuclear technology with France, which does. The USA and UK will be therefore sharing nuclear propulsion technology with Australia. There may be reasons to gloat a little over France's recent discomfiture, but let's be fair to our neighbour over the channel in matters of fact.
Julie Lysett of Lake writes, Staff at St Mary's are so good. I was admitted to the day surgery unit at St Mary's Hospital on September the 23rd for gallbladder surgery. From the moment I arrived, I was made to feel safe and welcome. The staff, while being professional, were caring, reassuring and compassionate. I was later admitted to the Mottistone ward overnight, and the same can be said of the staff there. They are a fantastic team. I could not have been treated better if I had booked into a private hospital. So much negativity is shared about the NHS, so I thought it was about time I shared the positive side. God bless you all, and thank you for always going above and beyond.
Calling all Newport businesses, Riverfest is back. From Joe Randall, Newport Business Association. The 6th Totally Locally campaign Riverfest will be taking place on October the 9th to the 23rd all over the UK, and Newport is joining with other high streets across Britain to put on special £5 offers during those 2 weeks. This year, Totally Locally has partnered with Visa, and together they are asking shoppers to divert £5 of their weekly spend to support the small businesses and consequently the local economy in their towns. It is up to us retailers to encourage this initiative by offering good, imaginative and worthwhile £5 offers in our shops. Fiverfest is free for any independent business to sign up to, and I am the coordinator for any Newport businesses wishing to take part. Any Newport businesses wanting to register for Fiverfest can email me, Joe Randall, at joe@loverunning.com, and I will send you the official guidelines, posters and social media images. More information of the national scheme can be found at www.totallylocally.org.
John Olborough of Sileham in Suffolk asks, why upgrade trains when buses can cope? Having just returned from yet another very enjoyable holiday on the Isle of Wight, I am left with the burning question as to why on earth £26 million is being spent on train and track upgrades for the existing Ryde to Shanklin line when the existing bus service copes with space to spare. This is during the summer too, when the island is packed with so-called staycationers. Off-season there must be even more space. Please don't tell me that upgrading the railway will encourage more people out of their cars. It won't. The superb bus service can handle it anyway. The railway is not missed at all right now. It should have been allowed to die a natural death and then have been handed over to the Isle of Wight Steam Railway for them to run. It would have attracted and carried far more passengers than the £26 million investment ever shall. The tourist industry would have benefited all round too.
Immigrants' view from Reniera O'Donnell in Ryde. Sometimes you read something that angers you in so many ways, it's hard to actually know how to respond. Jim Gibbons' recent column in the County Press of the 24th of September is one of those. Why? Perhaps because not only am I an Overner, but, and here's the shocker, I am an immigrant. Yes, I grew up in South Africa, and therefore I am someone who Jim suggests should be fingerprinted, DNA tested, and watched to ensure we don't drain this country or this island of its resources. It would be easy to refute the inaccuracies in Jim's column, but I prefer to share a different perspective. It is the fact that we are such an amazing patchwork of cultures, nationalities, colours, religions and experiences that makes Britain the place people want to come to. Why anyone would downplay the richness this brings just to keep them foreigners out is beyond me. Jim is right that the island's infrastructure is under strain, but why muddle the need for improved infrastructure with immigration? Even if not a single foreigner moved to the UK, unless we are planning mass sterilisation, the population will grow. We also all live longer and therefore all still be in our homes, meaning those kids will have nowhere to live. So let's be honest, we are going to need more homes, and we are going to need a lot of them. The Isle of Wight currently has a falling birth rate, with almost all of them overners moving here being older people. If we don't retain and attract a younger, more economically active population, who will care for them? Who will pay into the system that keeps us in free healthcare and pensions? Surely these people deserve a home that is more than Spartan. New homes and people moving to the island, or indeed Britain, should be celebrated. Development renews our infrastructure and brings young people to our ageing population with new ideas, jobs and opinions. If we want to stay relevant, pulling up the drawbridge and shouting "we're full" is not the answer. If Jim had done his homework, he'd have found out that under 11% of the island is built on. If all the houses proposed in the new island plan were built tomorrow, that figure would go up by only 1%. Hardly the concrete jungle many islanders talk about. We know that it has to be well managed, and our biosphere status shows that UNESCO already thinks it is. There are many positive people like me who believe that the growth of housing, jobs, economy and population on the island is a good thing. I don't understand why opinions like Jim's continue to be the prevailing noise. There are not yet enough of us beating the drum of why we should be supporting growth of population and homes. We must challenge the small-minded, pale, male and stale viewpoints that continue to give the island the reputation of being stuck in the past.
And on a similar note, stop building, says David McKinley of Knighton. Jim Gibbons, in his column on the misuse of land for building, from the County Press on the 24th of September, says, "Being an incomer myself, I am in a bad position to complain. So, as I was born here, perhaps I can take up the baton." He mentions the fact we have to pipe in water from the mainland, and I remember when the parish council, of which I was a member, was first advised this would be necessary. We all agreed if we could no longer supply our population with water rather than import it, we would stop importing people. We only have one hospital and one crematorium. We have limited space in which to bury our dead, and similarly our rubbish and our roads were never designed to carry the sort of traffic they are now expected to cope with. Surely any thinking person must see that to build more houses here is nothing short of madness.
Get Real Jim, from Sarah McCarthy Fry of Shanklin. Regarding Jim Gibbons' column in the County Press, the 24th of September, he should face up to the real reason for a housing crisis. Land hoarded by developers and not being built on, property hoarded by overseas investors with no intention of living in it, and housing supply deliberately kept short to ensure the price grows even further away from young people. Instead, he chooses to attack people who are unable to work through no fault of their own, or who can work but don't have the physical capacity to do things like picking crops, or who are looking after the young children and can't be away from home all week driving an HGV lorry. Many people on benefits are actually in work, but low-paid, insecure work. As for the desperate people who are trying to cross the channel in boats, they aren't coming here for the benefits or free NHS care. They are fleeing war-torn countries and have no choice but to leave. If their asylum claim is accepted, they want to work and contribute to this country. Many are professionals such as doctors, lawyers and teachers. This country isn't full, but we do have an ageing population. We need more people of working age, not fewer. We need them working and paying tax to fund the NHS, pay state pensions and support local infrastructure.
And now we move on to Wight Memories and Nostalgia. And this is a page from the County Press from October the 1st. And the headline reads, County Press Photos Capture the Past. It was written originally by Alan Stroud. Photographs made their first appearance in the County Press in the edition of September 27th in 1924. Prior to that, photographs were a rarity, expensive to produce and strictly reserved for important national events. With the appointment of a staff photographer, 3 or 4 photographs now began to appear every week, featuring subjects ranging from the sublime to the ridiculous. With cars a rarity and a sketchy bus service, life was still lived at the speed of a horse, and many islanders had no need nor opportunity to leave their town or village. Proving the point that islanders rarely travelled far, a regular competition featured photographs of island villages with the caption, "Can you name this town or village?" All the photographs there were originally appeared in the county press. Just over 100 of the original glass negatives have survived, allowing new prints to be made from them using modern technology. Nearly 100 years old, the glass negatives are as sharp and as clear as the day they were taken. A handful of some of the first photographs to ever appear in the county press, complete with their original captions, with the exception of the photo of Henry Saunders. Henry's picture had a much longer caption than normal, which reads as follows. Henry Saunders, death of an Afghan and Egyptian warrior. Henry Saunders, 82, of Fellows Road, Cowes, formerly a private in the Seaforth Highlanders, passed away on Friday week. A typical old soldier, it was remarkable having regard to the hardships and privations he underwent in foreign campaigns that he lived so long. He took part in the Afghan War of 1878 to 1880, and his Afghan medal bears the clasps Pure Cottle and Kabul. The veteran's other medals were the Egyptian of 1882 and the Khedive's Star of 1882. Saunders' hobby was renewing the wicker seats of chairs at which he was a real craftsman. He has left a widow and 11 children. Other photos included are the hunt meet in St James's Square, a view of Ashy races, ice skating on Sandown Reservoir, and a view of the site for Fishbourne Ferry Terminal.
And now we have my view from Catherine James. The public realm should not be our battleground. An amazing thing happened to me which has genuinely changed my life for good. I've been loaned an electric bicycle as part of a government scheme to get people cycling. With a press of a button, the e-bike's power assist kicks in, and almost regardless of how much energy my legs are contributing, the motor helps propel me up the island's hills, leaving me to anticipate the pleasure of freewheeling down the other side. Because of the speed at which I can now enjoy cycling, I tend to ride on main roads. Yes, there is a mostly viable segregated route for my commute between Ryde and Newport, but it's shared with strolling pedestrians and dogs, who certainly don't want me whizzing past at my gravity-assisted top speed of 32 miles an hour. However diligently I ding my warning bell. Despite my e-bike evangelism, my friends are concerned about me cycling alongside cars and heavier traffic, and I understand their anxieties. But as I am the most vulnerable, surely it is up to the people who can cause me catastrophic harm to be diligent. However carefully I ride, I'd still come off worst against a driver protected in their crush-proof metal box. The inference that, even as a legitimate road user, I might want to take myself out of harm's way and cycle apart from the traffic, made me think of the wider issue of safety in public spaces, primarily of women. Thankfully, I don't feel particularly nervous walking home alone at night on the island, But clearly, as recent events have once again tragically proven, some women's freedom to take a stroll in their neighbourhoods is potentially a dance with death. Following the recent unnecessarily killing of schoolteacher Sabina Nessa, I listened to MP Kit Malthouse, the Minister for Crime and Policing, on BBC Radio 4 Woman's Hour, admit that something needed to be done to improve the safety of women and girls. What I want, said the man in charge, is not just to catch the murderers, but I want there to be fewer murders. Fewer murders. Fewer murders? How about none? No murders. That's it there. The policy, the aspiration. Something we can all easily achieve every day by not murdering people. Extrapolating this simple concept, the public realm could easily be a safe place for everyone, for children to enjoy that first flush of independence as they make their own way to school, for people with decreased mobility to cross the road at their own pace, for lone women to perambulate any time of day or night, and for me and other people on bicycles to safely ride with the wind in our helmets and smiles on our faces. The solution to everyone's safety is in all our hands. Be kind. Easy, isn't it? So if you see a middle-aged woman on a bicycle, please don't drive aggressively or harass her with your horn. Her entitlement to be in the public realm is the same as yours.
Now we're going on to public information. Working Together to Address Issues by Laura P.C. Wilcox, who is the leader of the Isle of Wight Council. We have now been in office for nearly 5 months, and in that time a massive amount of work has been done to ensure those in the administration have got to grips with the many issues that face the island and the Isle of Wight Council. Not in any order, but the FB6 schools issues, transport hub coming out of a pandemic, concern over large-scale planning, road race, lack of key workers, festival, and now the fuel shortage. A key reason for this, other than being able to deal with the day-to-day work of the council, is because we have now begun the process of planning the next council budget. Although the actual budget will not be debated and voted on until next February, it will be the product of 6 months intensive work. Over the last 12 years, we have seen budgets that, with little exception, have done no more than manage declining resources by a process of cuts and withdrawn services. We are not in a state that will allow us to simply reverse that process, but we are taking an approach whereby such cuts are a last resort, and we will work through possible alternatives to taking those steps. Indeed, we will be looking to take a constructive and positive approach to those assets we still have, to protect what we need to maintain and support, and to ensure that, wherever possible, our approach concentrates on supporting our community. In the meantime, having got to grips with current and ongoing issues alongside planning the budget, we can now start moving to make important decisions. We have already implemented the new climate change strategy, and other decisions will be coming forward soon, dealing with ride interchange, dark skies, the floating bridge, supporting our biosphere, Chillerton and Rookley Primary School, and many more. Lastly, at the time of writing, there are still concerns about the availability of fuel. I know that everyone involved is doing everything possible to deal with the situation. The only danger we face will be the consequences of unnecessary panic buying. While the government is being slow to act, the best way to deal with the situation is simply for the public to only buy the petrol they need when they need it. The island is good at working as a supportive community, and if we do so, then it will cease to be a problem far sooner. Oh, and let's not get started on the turkey and Christmas debate, eh?
And some more public information. We need to get planning and housing right by Bob Seeley. Over the past 2 weeks, I have attended public meetings with residents in Freshwater, Wellow and Bembridge to discuss planning and housing in their communities. These meetings have been packed full of islanders concerned about ugly urban sprawl and the impact more and more greenfield development is having on the island's environment. I would like to thank all those islanders who have taken time to come to these meetings and contribute towards shaping our future. I thank also the planning department who have put a lot of work into it and councillors from all sides who are leading the debate in their own communities. The consultation on the new island plan closes today, Friday, and it's important that residents are listened to. We need to get planning and housing right. I believe that we should be making the case for exceptional circumstances when it comes to housing numbers, and that it is what I am urging the Council to do. That means challenging how the numbers are calculated, not just saying we can't build what government wants us to. For 50 years we have undermined our own case by not making the case for the island's unique status. We have rubber-stamped greenfield development time and time again, some of which has been land banked and never built on, so we haven't even met our targets. Much of what we have built has been the wrong type of housing. We build so little affordable housing, so we lose our young people, and we have families struggling to find suitable, affordable accommodation. Right now, it's a lose-lose situation. We need more council and housing association housing. We need housing for islanders. Our own population is actually predicted to decrease, so building nearly 500 homes a year is nonsense. We also don't have the capacity to build that, and we will just be setting ourselves up for failure. That's why we need to challenge the numbers as well as our ability to build. We need good quality housing, built to recognisable local styles, in appropriate numbers for islanders in existing communities. We do not need car-dependent, ugly, generic, low-density, large-scale housing estates on greenfield land that isn't built for islanders and damages our landscape, our quality of life and our tourism offer. Our natural environment is beautiful and precious, and we need to make sure it's protected, which is why I am lobbying government for greater landscape protection too. We need to get the island plan right, one that builds new homes in sensitive numbers, and one that gives greater thought to existing communities, the environment, infrastructure and local housing need. Islanders can submit their comments on the plan at www.isleofwight.gov.uk or email me at bob.seeley.mp@parliament.uk.
Now on to What's On. Edana Minghella set for show in Ventnor. Island promoters Vaguely Sunny are joining forces with Ventnor Exchange to present a jazz concert by the Edana Minghella Quartet. Since Edana's first island gig at Key Arts back in 2007, she has gone on to establish herself firmly as an accomplished mainstream jazz vocalist, performing at festivals and jazz clubs in the UK and across Europe. Her last island concert was at Freshwater Memorial Hall 2 years ago. Edana will be accompanied by Mark Edwards on piano, Pete Maxfield on double bass and Tony Woods on sax. The event will take place at St Catherine's Church in Ventnor on Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Tickets can be booked from ventnorexchange.co.uk or by calling 716 767 or pop into Ventnor Exchange on Church Street.
Sing for Health vocal group. Sing for Health is a brand new singing group open for anyone with long-term health issues, including cancer, heart and lung disorders, diabetes, mental health issues and other chronic conditions. Singing releases endorphins, relieves stress, improves mood, and contributes to emotional well-being. Studies show that singing boosts circulation and can even benefit your immune system. So why not come along and see what singing can do for you? Have fun and feel good in a low-pressure, welcoming environment as we go through the classics. It's only £5 per session and £2 for carers, and it's on Thursdays from 1:30 till 3 p.m. at the Chart Room, Gurnard Pines, and it starts this Thursday, the 7th of October. Contact Kay Howard on 07956 149 091.
Spotlight Theatre show set to sparkle at Mountbatten. Mountbatten will host Spotlight Isle of Wight's first ever roadshow production. The company behind many of the popular shows at Shanklin Theatre will bring sparkle and songs to the John Cheverton Centre on Friday, October the 8th. From Elvis to Eva Cassidy and Mary Poppins to Motown the musical, there will be something for everyone to enjoy at an evening with Spotlight Isle of Wight. James Derbyshire, Spotlight director, said, "Spotlight are honoured to be invited to perform at the hospice. We are extremely proud to have such a wonderful service on our doorstep, and we look forward to meeting everyone for a night of live entertainment. We can guarantee you will be singing along with the songs, laughing at the routines, and maybe even dancing in the aisles." Spotlight Show will be the second Mountbatten concert since its monthly series returned in September. COVID measures have been implemented, including spaced seating, meaning numbers are restricted. Tickets cost £10 and need to be bought in advance via the Mountbatten website. Anyone unable to book online can call Mountbatten on 529 511 for help. The show starts at 7:30 with wine and canapés served during the interval.
Brewed in the Bay is nirvana for beer fans. Beer lovers will be in their element next weekend at Brewed in the Bay. Over the would-be beer and buses weekend from October the 8th to the 10th, and also coinciding with Hullabaloo Light at Browns, Sandowns, Boojum and Snark, are staging a very special weekend. It will feature beers they have brewed on site at their high street premises using their electric Brew Magic kit. The selection will include Boojum, British IPA featuring British hops and heritage malt, Lacemaker Saison, packed full of coriander, pink peppercorns, star anise and ginger, Double Trouble, a dry double-style beer that has been fermented with barrel blocks and bourbon, Candy Lager, a lager that features the addition of pineapple, think old-fashioned boiled pineapple cubes, Bitter Secret, a pale ale made with Kvyat yeast and Nelson Sauvin and Victoria Secret hops. It's been a difficult task opening a craft beer tap room during a pandemic, so we're extremely grateful to our loyal supporters and visitors who've kept us going. We have exciting plans and look forward to contributing to the regeneration of the Bay Area. Opening times are Friday and Saturday 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Sunday 11 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And this is a tribute to John Hannam. Legendary showbiz writer John, missed by so many, which is written by Lucy Morgan. Tributes have been pouring in for Island entertainment legend, broadcaster and writer John Hannam. The much-loved journalist died aged 80 on Wednesday, September the 22nd. A long-standing friend of the Isle of Wight County Press, John was born in East Cowes and became best known for his easygoing interviews with the stars of stage and screen. However, he never forgot the island's own entertainment, sporting and community heroes. Local names frequently sat alongside the A-listers in his books, columns and shows. To spend time in John's company was to meet someone who was always interested in others, quick to ask about family and friends, and who loved what he did with an inspiring passion. One of John's first forays into journalism was through a newspaper entertainment column. Former colleague Richard Wright said, "Rarely, when people move in circles where ego is king, does something of that not rub off. Not in John's case." I interviewed John, was chatted to by him for his radio show, found a place in one of his books and subbed his copy over the years. I was always blown away by his boundless enthusiasm, vigour, and the fact that he was so nice about nearly everyone, and not in an obsequious way. He was a true gent. Stage Talk proved a popular addition to the Portsmouth News-owned Weekly Post, which was produced for around 15 years, from the mid-1970s. He also wrote a sporting column, reflecting his love for all things active. Until recently, John was a keen runner. Decades after he was named Hampshire's schoolboy mile champion and competed in the All England Championships, he ran the 26 miles of Walk the Wight and on at least one occasion ran back too. He also loved and played football and cricket. This week, tweeting about the achievements of Island county cricketers Adam Hose and Danny Briggs, Islander Jeff Hose said, "The extraordinary journalist John Hannon would have been so chuffed and excited. Rest in peace, John." It comes as no surprise that John also wrote for The Stage, the must-read national newspaper for all those in showbiz.
Lockdown rule breakers fined. Illegally getting together during COVID lockdown earlier this year has left plenty of islanders out of pocket, many by more than £2,000. A list of all island residents whose cases were heard at Aldershot Magistrates Court within the last 3 months for breaching lockdown regulation follows and runs into 3 columns.
Call for urgent repairs to pipes under islands' roads by Laurie Little. A damning report has outlined how fragile the southern water pipes are underneath the island's roads, damaging roads to the extent that 800 urgent excavations were needed between May and August alone. Burst pipes and freshwater leaks are leading to the waste of huge amounts of water every day. A report prepared by Island Roads for the Council on Southern Water's infrastructure and performance, seen by the county press, states the fragility of the infrastructure has been a matter of concern for many years. It reports that leaking apparatus causes untold delays to programmed works and measurable damage to both existing and newly treated sections of footway or carriageway. It continues, the absence of any programme of works to replace aged sections of the network is self-evident, with the number of main replacement works fallen to its lowest level on record. The number of immediate urgent repairs has risen to record levels. It finds that works classed as immediate or urgent have more than doubled in the last 3 years. There are several sites where structural deterioration is evident and a plan of remedial works is required, and Island Roads assesses that structural damage to the highway is likely. They are, with more than 6 burst pipes, Newport Road, Sandown, Parkhurst Road, Newport, Bridge Road, Cowes, Copse Lane, Freshwater, and Forest Road, Newport. Additionally, some roads have multiple leaking pipes. Carter Avenue, Shanklin, 27 leaks. Carisbrooke Road, Newport, 18 leaks. There are numerous sites where damage has occurred because of the failure of the foul waste system, including Tennyson Road in Yarmouth, Hope Hill in Shanklin, Shaw Hill in Ventnor, and North Walk in Ryde. In summary, Island Roads concludes the number of failures related to southern water infrastructure is at an unprecedented and unsustainable level, and urgent action is required to reduce the number of leaks, the number of immediate urgent works, and to acknowledge that damage to the highway caused as a result of the leaking apparatus remains the responsibility of Southern Water.
Chemo by drone. Chemotherapy will be flown by drone to Isle of Wight cancer patients within months, it has been announced. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust and Apian have begun a 3-month drone trial to optimise the delivery and research the benefits to healthcare of transporting urgent clinical items over the Solent using uncrewed aerial vehicles, or UAVs. If the research is successful, the clinical items will include the world's first delivery of chemotherapy by drone in November. Before the Trust approves flying live chemotherapy for their cancer patients, the University of Southampton, supported by Solent Transport, will test the impact of drone flight, which has vibration and temperature, on redundant medicine. Maggie Oldham, Chief Executive of the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, said, "We are delighted to be part of this pioneering project, researching a revolutionary way of transporting life-saving chemotherapy drugs. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have faced several challenges, including unprecedented supply chain and logistical demands worldwide, and this led to us exploring different ways of working to ensure a safe and efficient service for our patients. Moving items by drone across the Solent will help to speed up the delivery of critical supplies from hospitals on the mainland to the Isle of Wight, and will ensure our patients receive prescribed chemotherapy drugs efficiently. The UAVs are electric, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft weighing 85 kilograms, with a wingspan of 5 metres, capable of carrying up to 20 kilograms of payload. They were designed and developed by Skylift. They will be based at the British Army's Baker Barracks on Thorney Island and flown by former RAF, Royal Navy and airline pilots, trained by Flyby Technology. The Civil Aviation Authority has granted permission for the UAVs to fly in segregated airspace between Queen Alexandra Hospital's helipad in Portsmouth to Baker Barracks on Thorney Island and on to St Mary's.
Thatched cottage ravaged by fire. Heartfelt thanks have gone to the firefighters who fought desperately to save a picturesque thatched cottage from fire on Sunday evening, and the villagers of Calbourne for rallying around. Owner Abby Brown told the county press it had been devastating to lose their beautiful home, Merlin's Cottage. She said, "We are so grateful to all the firefighters who were absolutely incredible and worked throughout the night fighting the fire. The local people have been wonderful, with all kinds of offers of help and somewhere to stay, including Kate and Dave from the local pub, the Sun Inn, and Annie, our neighbour from across the road, who was getting ready for her night shift at the hospital, who alerted us and called the fire brigade. We are at present staying with lovely friends locally. We can't thank everybody enough for their kind words and offers of help, and a special thank you to all the fire crew." Merlin's Cottage on Elm Lane was the object of desire when it was a prize in a national newspaper competition to win a dream home in the country several years ago. In 2006, it was reproduced to 3/4 scale for the Hampton Court Palace Flower Show. Firefighters fought through the night on Sunday to Monday morning to control the blaze and prevent further spread.
Model village among top UK gardens to visit. Godshill Model Village was selected as one of the top 30 UK gardens to visit. Indian Fire Bowl Company analysed TripAdvisor review data on more than 200 UK Royal Horticultural Society gardens and partner gardens to provide a guide on the top 30 UK gardens for families to experience. Generated from more than 64,000 reviews, the results show the attraction in 13th position, with Bodnant Gardens in Conwy, Wales coming first. Godshill Model Village received more than 2,000 positive TripAdvisor reviews. Model Village owner Stuart Dyer said, "As a RHS partner garden, we are thrilled to be part of the RHS family, helping to enrich life through plants. Our TripAdvisor ranking has gradually evolved, with fantastic reviews from customers commenting on our conifer collection, attention to detail and wonderful team. Our gardeners are constantly quizzed by customers for ideas on how to use similar techniques at home, so providing inspiration is part of what we do. God's Hill Model Village is open daily between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. until the 31st of October.
If you go down to America Wood, one of the Isle of Wight's most picturesque woodland walks is looking even more beautiful thanks to a £20,000 makeover. The scenic bridleway through Shanklin's America Wood has been restored and enhanced by the Isle of Wight Council's Rights of Way team and a host of other partners. America Wood, owned by the Woodland Trust, is near to the old railway line west of Shanklin. The footpath and bridleway through the wood has long been a challenging route for walkers and riders, with muddy areas even in dry weather. Now, with support from the Isle of Wight Ramblers and the Isle of Wight Bridleways Group, a programme of repairs and improvements has made the route much more easily accessible to all. Rights of Way manager Darryl Clark said, "America Wood is one of the most protected wildlife sites in the country, and access is difficult for materials and machinery. We had to be careful we didn't cause damage to the delicate woodland floor."
Collapsed road to be fully reinstated. Works to reinstate Belgrave Road in Ventnor will take another year, the Isle of Wight Council has said. Preliminary works are underway ahead of the main scheme to reinstate the failed wall and road above, which will get underway this month. Local company Stoneham Construction has been appointed following a tender process to undertake the main works that are expected to last just over a year, before completing in autumn 2022. The work will see the collapsed wall dismantled and the area behind it stabilised before a new wall is built and the road and footway reconstructed. In consultation with the local conservation officer, a natural stone finish will be used to replace the wall so it is in keeping with others in the surrounding area. The new parapet wall will also be higher than existing to conform with the latest safety requirements for both pedestrians and vehicles. Contractors are currently working on site to prepare the area for the arrival of additional site machinery and equipment. Scaffolding has also been erected on Esplanade Road to enable them to undertake any strengthening works on the walls supporting the terraces before the main work on the site begins. Councillor Phil Jordan, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure, said, "This has been a complex process over the course of the last year and a half to manage the challenges on site and determine the best solution. I thank residents for their patience throughout this time, and I am delighted that the process towards reinstating the road can finally begin. During the main works, construction traffic will be entering the site from Park Avenue, and some temporary parking restrictions will be necessary at the narrowest part of Belgrave Road to ensure vehicles can safely move to and from the site. Ground monitoring equipment will be checked at regular intervals throughout the works, with additional checks after any periods of poor weather, as they have been to date, and regular site inspections will also continue."
Socially isolated teen plotted to kill her gran. A teenage girl plotted to kill her grandmother and attacked her in the kitchen by hitting her over the head with a bass guitar. The 14-year-old had messaged friends before the attack, describing how she would kill her victim. After the attack, she initially faced a charge of attempted murder, but pleaded guilty to the lesser offence of causing grievous bodily harm with intent, which was accepted by the Crown Prosecution Service. The girl, who cannot be named for legal reasons, appeared at Swindon Crown Court for sentencing last Friday after the attack on February the 19th. The girl had become isolated from society after dropping out of school, and things got worse due to the COVID pandemic. The only friends she had were online ones. Prosecutor Robert Welling said she lived in a virtual world and spent most of her time socialising on the internet with a group of friends. Her grandmother worried the online friends were grooming her, but the messages didn't support that. The chats developed into her saying she wanted to kill her grandmother. The chats showed the friends thought she was joking, and they had made attempts to dissuade her. The girl planned which day to carry out the attack and considered using a knife or a guitar to kill her victim in her sleep. She had the idea of targeting the grandmother's head as her skull was weakened by a previous serious injury. On the day of the attack, the grandmother refused to give the girl her phone due to concerns over the amount of time she was spending online, and moments later, while the grandmother was cooking in the kitchen, the girl attacked her from behind. She struck the back of her neck with the heavy end of a bass guitar. Mr. Welling said the grandmother thought the ceiling had collapsed on her head. She turned around to see the granddaughter with the guitar. The grandmother got the bass guitar off the girl, who then picked up an electric guitar. There were 3 to 5 blows, leaving the victim with bleeding and bruising. The grandmother made such a noise, the neighbours came to her rescue. The girl told the neighbour she was trying to kill her grandmother, and later made the same admissions to police. She felt killing her grandmother was the only way to get freedom, and she felt stifled, Mr. Welling said. Mr. Welling also said it was a wholly naive plan as to where she would go afterwards and what she would achieve. She thought she could take a car, learn to drive and get off the island, get to Scotland and start a revolution in Europe. It betrays the level of maturity. The victim said this was a girl who believed she would be a mermaid or a My Little Pony if she died, and said she had been let down by CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. She said it was her wish for her grandmother to be treated for mental health issues. She said during the attack her grandmother had a robotic look on her face with a lack of emotion. Jodie Mitchell, representing the girl, said the probation report showed remorse and regret, and it was plain the girl had been describing an upsetting home life. She said the girl had spent 7 months in custody already. Judge Peter Crabtree said the girl wouldn't be returned to the family home, but would be reintegrated into education and society. He made her subject of a 2-year youth rehabilitation order, where she would be cared for on the mainland under strict conditions, including a 3-month curfew from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And that's all we have time for today, so it's goodbye from Madeline.
And goodbye from me, Morris.
There is no scaffolding news this week. The In Touch programme follows. AI macular degeneration detection, new money for blind sport. It can be a common occurrence to hear your doctor say, if only we caught this sooner. Well, the reading department at Moorfields Eye Hospital have created a way to detect signs of one of the most common causes of blindness, all in under 30 seconds. They've done this using artificial intelligence technology, and it can detect dry age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. There is currently no treatment for this condition, unlike the wet form of the disorder, but it is an exciting development in AI medicine. We speak with Dr. Konstantinos Balaskas about how it all works, and with Kathy Yelf from the Macular Society about potential future treatment for the condition. Sport England have dedicated £1 million to get visually impaired people more active. It will be delivered through a 3-year campaign called See Sport Differently. It comes as new figures show that blind and partially sighted people are twice as likely to be completely inactive as people without a vision impairment, with more than half of people with a vision impairment doing less than 30 minutes of physical activity a week. Paralympics GB medal winners Chris Skelly and Libby Clegg have launched the campaign. We will be speaking with Libby about it, her sporting career and what she plans to do now she's announced her retirement.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, diagnosis in the blink of an eye. How artificial intelligence could massively speed up the spotting of potential causes of blindness. And new money for blind sport. What could £1 million do for getting more of us out of our armchairs and taking exercise?
It's about inspiring that next generation, and I'd love to continue to support athletes on all levels, grassroots right the way up to elite level, in their sporting journey.
Double Paralympic sprint champion Libby Clegg. We'll be hearing more from Libby a little later. But first, how often have we heard a doctor say, if only we could have caught this earlier, there's more we could have done? Well, now it's being suggested that with the use of artificial intelligence, some forms of potential eye disease could be spotted in a matter of seconds. Conditions which in the past would have taken much longer to identify by an individual doctor. The algorithm making this possible has been developed at Moorfields Eye Hospital and is starting to be used to see early signs of a form of macular disease. Dr Konstantinos Velasquez heads the reading centre at Moorfields where this has all been developed. Dr Velasquez, first of all, tell us about the condition you're now able to detect more quickly. It's called geographic atrophy. What is it?
Geographic atrophy is one of the forms of age-related macular degeneration, or for short AMD, which is the most common cause of sight loss in the United Kingdom. It accounts for more than 50% of certifications of visual impairment. And AMD has a number of forms and a number of stages of severity. Geographic atrophy is one of the advanced stages of AMD. Your audience may be familiar also with the distinction between wet and dry AMD, and geographic atrophy falls under the umbrella of dry AMD. It's one of the advanced forms that can cause sight loss.
And that, of course, is the form of AMD which has so far proved very resistant to treatment. So what does this change in a way? OK, you can diagnose quickly, but what does that mean you can do about it?
That's a great question. Perhaps it would be useful to take a step back and talk about how we detect, diagnose this condition and how we monitor it. So we use eye scans, they're called optical coherence tomography scans. These are very commonly used and they give very detailed pictures of the back of the eye. And they help us not just detect AMD, but also distinguish the different forms that I mentioned before. And that is important because not all forms require the same management. Wet AMD, for example, that is urgent, needs to be detected early, and for which we have effective treatments. Our ability to prevent sight loss are much greater. With geographic atrophy, which is advanced dry AMD, the situation is slightly different. This is a form of AMD that progresses slowly over time. And early detection is important, but even more important is to be able to monitor how this condition grows, progresses slowly over time. And these changes can be subtle and require careful inspection by clinicians. And this is where our AI system can prove extremely useful by helping clinicians detect these slow changes over time and identify patients that are more likely to progress faster.
So does that mean that really people should have very regular eye tests? Because if you're going to detect it early, people won't know that they've got it just by observation, will they?
In this particular case of geographic atrophy, as you correctly mentioned before, we don't as yet have effective treatments as opposed to wet AMD. However, there is good reason for optimism. There are a number of treatments in advanced stages of clinical trials that show great promise.
Are these mainly drug treatments?
Yes, these are in the form of eye injections. And the way these treatments will act is by slowing down the progression of these areas of wear and tear that we call geographic atrophy. So in dry AMD, what happens is parts of the tissue at the back of the eye that contains the cells that are sensitive to light and help us see, they degenerate over time. And that slowly progresses. This AI system, a very exciting thing about it is it can help us not only detect, but also monitor how these areas change over time. And once these treatments become available, it can help us assess how well our patients respond to our treatments.
Just a couple of quick questions about the AI method. I mean, just how quickly can they actually reach a conclusion about your eye?
That is probably the most exciting element of all. On average, it took our experts in the reading center who were grading the images 46 minutes to carefully analyze every scan. It now takes the AI system 2.04 seconds to do the same task. And so that can have a transformative effect on clinical practice.
Just stay there a moment. I'd like to bring in Kathy Yelf, who's CEO of the Macular Society, which offers support to people with a whole range of macular disease. Kathy, you talk to people at the sharp end of these problems every day. What's your reaction to this development? Clearly the scientists are excited. Is it premature for individuals to be excited?
No, I don't think so. I think this is a tremendous achievement, and I do congratulate Konstantinos and all the people at Moorfields who've done this. It is an amazing piece of work. It might be that right now, patients with dry AMD right this minute won't know or get direct benefit from it. But as we've heard, there are some treatments now for dry AMD, geographic atrophy in late stage clinical trials, and they will be moving forward to get regulatory approval soon, we hope, and they may be coming into clinical practice in the next few years. Now, if that happens, that would be wonderful. But we know, for example, the clinics are full. The clinics are full of people with wet AMD at the moment. We don't have enough capacity in clinics to treat the people who need treating fully now. So if we double the number of patients that we could treat with intravitreal injections into the eye, then the NHS will buckle. It will absolutely buckle. And we've also got the massive COVID backlog as well. So there's a huge amount of innovation going on in the NHS to improve the speed at which patients can be seen in clinic and to improve the speed of treatment. So the fact that this is becoming available now, and I'm sure the testing will continue, if it's ready for when these new patients come into the system, that will make an enormous difference to the NHS's ability to treat it.
So how do you balance the excitement that surrounds this kind of development with the inevitable caveat that it always takes time for this to translate into successful treatment? And as you said, it takes money, it takes beds, it takes staff.
It does. But this isn't the only reason why this is useful. The other really important thing for this kind of technology and this kind of understanding of disease is for research. So we know that we have a marvellous treatment for wet AMD that has made a difference to a huge number of people's lives, and similar treatments we hope will be coming through, but they're not the complete solution. And in all these conditions, we're treating disease really when sight is already affected, and it's quite difficult to turn the clock back then. What we really want to do is to understand disease and be able to design clinical trials for early stages of AMD before people start to lose their vision. And it is artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, that is helping us to understand the disease processes and how this disease progresses from the very earliest stages through to the very late point of sight loss. Because geographic atrophy, dry AMD, is a very long-term condition, it starts very slowly. We know that perhaps a quarter of people over 60 have some form of early or intermediate AMD, but we don't know who is going to go on and lose their vision, and we don't know why. And designing clinical trials at the moment, the only way we can measure the success of a clinical trial is whether somebody's sight gets worse or not. And that's not a really ideal solution if we want to treat disease early. We've got to understand the early points of the disease where we can say, yes, this is definitely progressing now. And that way you can test interventions earlier in the disease process and possibly get to a point where nobody ever has to lose their vision.
That is perhaps a long way away, but an exciting idea. Dr. Balaskas, is there any danger that this development could sort of erode the personal relationship between ophthalmologist and patient. After all, examination of the eye is also when some of the talking gets done between patient and doctor. Patients can ask important questions. Is this new AI detection now the standard, or will it be the standard?
Concerns of that type have been expressed, and it is important to take them quite seriously. In this particular case, it would probably lead to quite the opposite result. It would allow more time for interaction between clinicians and patients. In essence, it would lead to less time for a doctor spending looking at the screen and trying to interpret these complex scans. And so it would liberate clinicians to interact more meaningfully with patients. AI has the potential to offer the gift of time to clinicians and patients.
Dr. Konstantinos Balaskas, Cathy Yell, thank you both very much indeed. Now, as the Paralympics amply demonstrated, lack of vision doesn't have to mean lack of participation in sport. Still, we can't all be sporting champions, and recent research by the RNIB showed that over half of visually impaired people interviewed did less than half an hour of physical exercise a week, way less than the NHS recommendations of 150 minutes. Now, though, Sport England has come up with £1 million specifically to help stimulate sporting activity amongst visually impaired people in a 3-year campaign run by the RNIB and British Blind Sport. David Clark is the RNIB's Director of Services and a former Paralympics GB footballer himself. David, how are you going to translate this money into actual sporting action?
Well, thank you, Peter. I mean, look, the statistics you gave are maybe a little shocking, but of course there's lots and lots of reasons why that is the case. And we believe that there are a number of barriers that exist. Around 48% of those people surveyed said they think that barrier is their sight loss, but 53% of people said there are other barriers that exist as well. And most importantly, 8 out of 10 people we surveyed said they really would like to do more sport and physical activity. So the way we're going to do this is amplify the existing opportunities that exist, and organisations and our partners, British Blind Sport and lots of local associations, do a wonderful job of doing this already. We want to amplify that and also increase those opportunities. We want it to be an expectation of people in sporting venues and sporting facilities that blind and partially sighted people will want to come and do sport. And of course, the final tranche is to educate people across the sporting workforce and to ensure that venues and even things like sports equipment and even down to sports broadcasting is accessible.
But that's an interesting point. Isn't there a danger that this money, which with the best will in the world only amounts to 50 pence per visually impaired person, might just be, spent on raising awareness, which is a rather vague concept as opposed to real action?
This is not just about raising the opportunities with people, as I mentioned, or indeed the expectations. This is about demonstrating to people that it's absolutely part of their everyday activity to provide opportunities for blind and partially sighted people to play sport and do physical activity like anyone else. And one of the things I was struck by was that about a third of the people we surveyed said there are sports they'd love to do that they haven't done, such as things like horse riding, for example. So no, it's not just about raising expectations. That's not good enough. It's actually about changing hearts and minds and getting more and more blind and partially sighted people active.
Well, someone who's lending her support to this See Sport Differently campaign is sprinter Libby Clegg, one of our most successful athletes for more than the past decade, peaking with 2 golds in Rio in 2016. Libby, welcome back to In Touch. First, tell me, how would you like to see this money spent?
I would love it to be spent, educating people in like leisure centres and clubs and making them more aware. That extra bit of training for me is one of the biggest barriers that people face, is that customer service or that reception desk where they don't necessarily know how to deal with a visually impaired or blind person. And for me, that would be really beneficial to upscale, the workforces, because sometimes it's not about adapting the equipment. It's also about that human touch, that connection with another person that can make all the difference in an environment.
Because the first contact, if that's not successful, that can frighten away people for good, can't it?
Massively. I mean, I've experienced it myself where Not even just in a sporting situation, but even going to a cafe. If I have a really negative experience, I won't go back again. And, that would be no different than me going to a gym, having a negative experience. I'm going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to heighten my anxiety. And it's not just about the visual being in an unknown environment. It's all the different sounds, different people. And it can be really disorientating, and it can be quite a scary environment for a blind person anyway. So adding that then negative experience just as an additional reason not to go back. So if that initial interaction is really positive, you're more likely to get involved and continue to go.
How did you get started? How did you develop an interest in sport yourself?
So I was always quite competitive. I loved sports day in school, and I'd taken dance classes when I was really little. And I just went along to my local athletics club when I was 9, and I just got diagnosed at the same time. I was very, very lucky that I had a really supportive club. I also linked up with British Blind Sport, actually, who are working in partnership with the RNIB, and they really supported me in just not only just the athletics element of it, but I also got to meet lots of other children that had visual impairments, and it kind of normalised my disability for me and also showed me how I could participate in sport.
Just on a more personal note, you announced your retirement at the end of these recent Paralympics. What are you going to do now, and how are you going to stay fit?
I'm potentially looking at going into cycling, but I've never cycled before. So, I've been on a bike, but I've not ever been in a velodrome or anything. So I'm going to give that a little go. But, for me, it's about inspiring that next generation. And I'd love to continue to support athletes on all levels, grassroots right the way up to elite level, in their sporting journey.
Right.
Because I've got lots of experience I'd like to pass on.
David Clark, finally, can people apply for some of this money? I mean, are you looking for ideas on projects from people?
So what the initial research did was to give us a base point to work from, and now we are in the process of formulating what that programme will be. We know, for example, that one of the big things we're going to be doing towards the back end of next year is a mass participation event, but we are absolutely open to ideas, and they can be shared with us. I would encourage people to go to the See Sport Differently section of the RNIB website. There's lots of brilliant tools there which British Blind Sport have shared with us around activities. This is about getting more and more people active and making it easier. And I was really struck by something that Libby said there. I was lucky enough to have a supportive club. It shouldn't be about luck, and we intend to make it that way.
David Clark, Libby Clegg, thank you very much indeed. And if you've got ideas, you might like to tell us about them. Also, tell us how you keep fit or what's stopping you. And with all the talk about social care over the last few weeks, just another topic we'd like to hear from you about. We want to hear from people who are newly losing their sight and need help with relearning daily living skills. Are you getting the help you need, and how long is it taking? You can email us at intouch@bbc.co.uk. You can leave a voice message on 0161 836 1338 or visit bbc.co.uk/intouch, where you can get more information and download tonight's and previous editions of the programme. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, studio managers Mike Smith and Sue Stone Street. Goodbye.